Hello, welcome to crackingmba.com. Today we're going to discuss about bar charts in the data interpretation section. We'll just quickly discuss about the numericals in bar charts to understand how bar charts works, right? We won't talk in depth about any theory, but just talk about the numericals and see how we can solve questions on bar charts in the minimum time possible. So let's just take some data for solving a bar chart that is given below, right? What we have here is the imports and exports for various years from 96 to 2001, and the imports are and exports are in rupees crores, and you have a trade surplus and a trade deficit, right? A definition is provided for a trade surplus, which is nothing but the difference between an export and an import, and it should be positive, and a deficit is nothing but a difference between an import and an export, and a value being a positive value. So that's a trade deficit. So let's just start analyzing how to answer questions based on such data sets, right? So clearly this is a bar chart and it represents the imports and exports for the various years. So if you look at the first question, it says how many years was there a trade deficit from 96 to 2001? So first we should analyze what is the definition of a trade deficit. It says the difference between an import and an export, which means that the import should be greater than export. So if you look at the graph, we don't have to really get the values, right? We don't need to say what is the exact value. So we can see that the y-axis represents the values, right? So for 96, we can see the value lies between 60 to 120, right? But we don't need to know exactly whether it's 90 or 100 or 80. All we need to know is where we have the import being greater than the export, right? So that's when you have a trade deficit. So if we look from 96 to 2001, we can clearly see that for those where the blue line is greater than the red line, there is a trade deficit. Okay, so we can just observe the pattern and we can find that 96, yeah, there is a trade deficit. 97, no. 98, yes. 99, no. 2000, no. 2001, yes. So just by visually comparing the data, you can analyze and come to your conclusion. So the answer for this is 3 years, 96, 98 and 2001. Okay, so the answer is option C. Let's now look at the next question, which says, in which year was the ratio of trade deficit to exports the least? So here, again, we need to see what the definition of trade deficit is, which is nothing but difference between imports and exports. So we're saying when was the ratio the least? So we just look at this again. This is a question of visual analysis, okay? Don't jump to writing numbers on the paper when it's not required, right? Here, if you see, we want the ratio to be the least, okay? So typically when we are seeing which all years have trade deficit, like we saw in the previous question, so let's take that as an input. Now we saw that the trade deficit is only there for 96, 98 and 2001. Now what was the trade deficit in 96? Approximately around 20 to 30, right? Similarly in 98, you can see the difference is almost the same, and in 2001 is also the difference is almost the same, right? So we don't need to know what exactly the difference is, so long as we know the difference is almost the same. And if you want to know the exports the least, if the numerator is the same, right, the trade deficit is a numerator and the denominator is the exports. So we can find that if the numerator is the same in all three cases, but the denominator is the highest, then automatically that ratio is going to be the least, right? This is a concept from ratios. So simply by looking at this, you can say that the denominator is the highest in case of 2001, and hence the ratio is the least in 2001. So this we attempted without even putting a pen on paper, right? So just by visual comparison, you should be able to answer such questions. Coming to the next question, we are seeing in the year 1998, the total weight in tons was 12 tons. What was the average cost of the imports per ton? So here we see that first of all, we can observe that the data is given in rupees crores, right? And in 98, they're saying the total weight imported was 12 tons. So the imports over here we can find is 120 crores and the import was 12 tons. So the cost of the imports per ton is nothing but 120 by 12, which is 10 tons. So the answer is A. So this is a direct interpretation question. So these are all sitter questions which you must go through the paper at least once and attempt them. You should never miss these kind of questions. Next question is, the trade deficit in 95 is the same as the trade deficit in 96. If the exports in 95 was the same as the exports in 96, then what were the imports in 95? So these are the kind of questions which look complicated and which you will be tempted again to put your pen on paper, but you must notice that this is just a trick question. There is no math, there's no extra math required here. For example, he's saying the direct trade deficit is the same as in 96 and the exports are also same, which means that the imports also will be the same as 96, because the import is nothing but the difference between is the import. If the exports are the same and the trade deficits are the same, then the imports are automatically the same. So if all we need to see is what were the imports in 95 in 96, and we observe that it is somewhere between 60 to 120. Okay, so from all the options we can notice that the only option which can be the correct answer is 100, and we can mark that answer. So what the summary of this particular set is that a lot of times you need not have to put your pen on paper, or you need, even if you do, you need not do extensive calculations to get the exact numbers. You should be able to do a visual comparison and arrive at answers, right? Let's now look at a different type of set. So here we are saying we have, it's a simple one. We have 4 sections A, B, C and D, and we are saying that the maximum allocated strength is 40, but actual strength is as shown below, right, in this graph. Also, do we know that in each section, the total number of student girls are at least 50% or more, yes? So now let's attempt the question. So the first question is, how many sections have more than 10 girls? Now, we just know the total number of students, but we don't have the exact details of the girls. But based on the fact given that there are at least 50% girls, we can just arrive at an answer. So if you look at this, to have more than 10 girls, we must have at least 20 or more students in that class, because 50% are girls. So if you look at this, how many of them have more than 20, right? So since we are saying more than 10 girls, we must have 20 or more than 20, I'm sorry. So the only thing that matches is section A and section D, because they have more than 20 students in those sections. So the answer is 2, which is B. Now let us see next question. How many sections have greater than 75% of the sanction capacity? So if we are saying should be greater than the sanction capacity, 75% of greater sanction capacity, the sanction capacity is 40, so the section strength should be at least 0.75 into 40, which is at least 30 students. Okay, so if we see how many of them have greater than 30 students, clearly we can observe that it is section D. So just by visually looking at it, you can just come to the answer. So the answer is A, option A, which means there's just one section. Next question is, the total marks in each section in maths are 1200, 540, 1200 and 720 for the sections A, B, C and D. Which section has the highest average marks in math subject? So this has got to do with where you can put your pen on paper, or if you're good, you can visually analyze this as well. So quickly we can just put 1200 is the total marks divided by the batch strength is 30 for section A, 540 divided by somewhere between 15 to 20. Then for section B, 1200 by 20 for section C, and 720 by around 36 for section D. So if we just do the quick math, we can just see we don't need to even actually solve it. We can immediately eliminate one of the options. For example, 1200 by 30 and 1200 by 20. 1200 by 30 will be lesser than 1200 by 20 because the denominator is more, so we can eliminate option A. So we just have 3 options left, out of which we can quickly see that the second option is 30, third option is 60, and fourth option is 20. So clearly the answer is option C. Which section has the highest number of girls in that section? So based on the facts available, can we just determine this? Let's look at this. The total number of girls in each section could be at least 50%. So in section A, there could be 15 or more girls who are 15 or more girls. In section B, there could be approximately 9 or more girls. Section C can have about 10 or more girls, and section D can have about 18 or more girls. But can we say which class exactly has the most number of girls? Maybe not. Let's see how. For example, section D has 18 girls, whereas section C can have at least 10 girls. But it is possible that in section C, all the students are girls, which means there could be 20 girls in section C and just 18 girls in section D, right? Or there could be more number of girls in section A. Out of 30 students in section A, there could be all 30 girls, right? So we cannot exactly determine between D, C, and A which one can have more number of girls. So the data is clearly insufficient, and hence the option is data insufficient. Option D. So that's it for today. So basically, the objective of the charts that have been chosen so far has been that you should be able to analyze the data based on visually comparing the data instead of putting your pen and paper and wasting time in solving questions with pen and paper. That's one. And second thing is comparison using ratios. You should just be able to see where if the numerator is the same, then if you want the least value, then you should go to the highest denominator. So should be able to just compare based on this fact. That's it for today on the bar charts, and these are the closing notes. You can take a mock test from our Android app to test your knowledge. Thank you.